Hey guys, we have reached the end of the year, so it's time to look back on the 5 things that I learned in my second year of growing a cut flower garden. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Peggy and I am growing a cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA Zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, lesson 1, and these are in no particular order. Lesson 1 is that flowers do not always smell the way that you expect them to and the way that you want them to. So there are some flowers that are known for really smelling nice. Your freesia, your daffodil, those kind of flowers. They're kind of spring flowers, sweet pea. These smell beautiful. Some flowers that you think should have a scent don't at all. So your big dahlia that are super big and showy have no smell at all. Your zinnia, which again are so colourful, right in the middle of summer they're coming up and you expect them to have a smell that would match how beautiful and colourful they are, and they don't. There's no smell at all. The likes of my straw flower, no smell at all, no scent. But then there were some that I grew this year and I was really surprised about how bad they smelled. So one of those was my sea holly, or my orangium. Now, I've seen people wear this at weddings a lot in Scotland. They use them as their boutonnieres. And I'd never really thought about them having a scent because I guess thistle don't have a scent at all. And it's kind of like a sea thistle. So I thought it would be the same, but it's not. They smelled really bad. And not only did they smell bad when they were freshly cut and in arrangements, but as they dried, they smell even worse. Now that I've got them fully dry, they don't have a scent at all. The dried flower doesn't smell, but it was a really sour, bitter smell that they had, and it was not nice at all at any stage. So I'm not sure if when you're wearing it for a wedding, you've only got one little piece, so it doesn't smell so bad, but whatever it was, I was growing the Blue Hobbit variety, and it was terrible. And I tend to show my flowers in my genkan, which is like your Japanese porch, which is a small area and it's confined. And so there's not great airflow in there. So as soon as you open the front door, it really hit you in the face that this flower does not smell nice. Another one is feverfew. I know that a lot of flower farmers grow feverfew because it's a great filler. It runs basically the whole of the summer season. It comes up early, it lasts late, and it's a great filler. And it's just that kind of happy flower that everyone likes, kind of typical daisy. I had some that seeded itself in the garden, and again it smelled terrible. And not only did that smell terrible, it had a terrible pollen drop as well. There was just pollen everywhere. So you do get a straw flower that looks kind of like feverfew, but it has the kind of papery petals. I guess it's not as airy and delicate as the feverfew, but I don't like the smell of it. One flower that I have avoided growing because I don't like the smell of it is Crysanthemum, and I think it smells like cat pee. I really don't like it. Again, it's quite a sour smell, but I put these in the garden because obviously this is the end of December and these guys are still flowering, and I just wanted a bit more variety. And while they smell here, not great, these ones don't actually smell as bad as some of the other ones, and I found that once you cut them, they're not leaving a scent in the house. So these guys have maybe redeemed themselves on the smelliness factor. Now, although some flowers don't smell bad when you cut them, I have found that when you're drying them, they tend to smell quite bad. Now, again, I am drying my flowers inside my house. I have no outdoor space. I don't have a shed. I don't have a garage. I don't have a basement. I've got none of that. So I am having to dry everything indoors, and it is humid in Japan. When you're drying flowers, you really want to have a nice dry air to get all of the moisture out as quickly as you can, and I don't have that. Japan is really dry in the winter but super humid in the summertime, and maybe that's what's causing this issue. Again, it's not like a horrendous get these flowers out my house smell, but it is, I walk through the door and think, that's not very nice. So if you have the option of drying your flowers outdoors, I would do that. I don't mean outdoors in the outdoors, but in a shed or in a garage or kind of an out of your house space, I would recommend that, because when you see the pictures on Instagram of people and they've got them all over the roof hanging down everywhere, I cannot imagine how bad that must smell. And again, it's that kind of sour, damp sweat smell to it. It's weird. So yeah, number 1, things don't smell nice all the time or as you would expect them to. Okay, lesson number 2. Admit when something is done, when something hasn't worked, and get it out the garden. Now, my allotment is only 4 meters by 5 meters, so I am really struck for space. And I can't have things in here that aren't producing for me. It's just a waste. If you have been following along, you'll know that I had China Aster in here, and I had my stock next to them. Now, I had grown stock as autumn planted and spring planted. We'll come back to this in another lesson. I had my spring stock that just didn't do anything because the spring is too short. And so I'd left it there, but it didn't die. It sat there, it got slightly taller. It stayed green, it stayed full. And I thought, if this can last the summer and the heat of the summer, maybe, just maybe, when it cools down, this stock might flower. I don't know why I thought that. There was nothing telling me that. The seed packet didn't tell me that. Instructions on how to grow stock did not tell me that. But for some reason I thought, it's not dead, I'm going to leave it in. And what happened was, as the weather got hotter, the stock continued to do nothing except become a house for Japanese beetle. There is not much you can do about Japanese beetle when you live in Japan. There's a lot of them. So I had left this in, it became a home for Japanese beetle, which hid under the leaves of the stalk during the day and then came out when it was cooler and ate all of my China Aster. Yeah, every single one. I did not get a single bloom of aster because they were completely decimated by the beetle. And I don't think that would have happened if I had not given them somewhere to live. So, and of course the stalk did nothing after that. It did die in the heat of the summer. So my lesson learned was, stop hoping that something is going to come up. It's not. Get it out, get something else in its place, and stop giving things that you don't want in your garden somewhere to live. Another thing was my Firecracker Vine. Now, I had put that in as a late sowing, as something that hopefully would give me flowers towards the end of the season, and it did. It's just, it was too close to the end of the season, so I had nothing else to put with it. And although the flowers came up, when it got colder, the flowers didn't like it, and they were past their best. They were still flowering, but they weren't beautiful. But I left them in. Now, the problem with this is that I don't have a big garden, I don't have a lot of equipment, and I was growing them, because it was a vine, I was growing them up my trellis, which I needed for my sweet pea. And because I didn't have my trellis, I didn't put my sweet pea in. And so I have ended up now being behind on where I should be for my sweet pea. I should have had them in possibly 3, maybe even 4 weeks earlier than I did, because I didn't have a trellis to grow them up. So again, I should have said, the Firecracker Vine isn't doing what I want, I've got nothing to go with it, the flowers aren't great, get it out. And it feels bad ripping out something that has flowers on it, but realistically, that would have been better used for my sweet pea. So yeah, lesson 2, if it's not doing anything for you, if it's past its best, get it out, get something else in its place. Lesson 3, if you don't like something, don't grow it. And it seems like a really obvious thing, but it's hard. When you see everybody else growing something, it's hard. If you have seeds left, it's hard to say, actually, I don't really like that, so I'm not going to put it back in my garden. And I learned this with 2 things. First, my sweet pea that I put in. I couldn't find the beautiful big frilly sweet pea that I was seeing online, and so the only sweet pea I could find in my local home centre was just a basic sweet pea, just bog standard sweet pea, and it was a mix, so I didn't really know what colours I was going to get. And what ended up coming through was lots and lots of baby pink. Not my thing. And I found that I was cutting it and taking it home and then not using it. It was just sitting. It didn't go with anything else that I was growing in the garden. It didn't match any of the arrangements, and I just wasn't inspired by it. I didn't want it. So that was a waste of money, it was a waste of my time, and it was a waste of space in the garden. I should really have said, actually, I can't find what I like, so I'm going to grow a completely different variety of flowers of something that I do like instead. So I feel like I really wasted time with that one. The other one was behind me. I had some calendula at the top of this row right at the beginning of spring, and I'd grown calendula the year before and not liked it. I didn't like it because it didn't grow very tall, it didn't give me a long stem, and it was super sticky. The stem was sticky, the leaves were sticky, it wasn't nice to work with, it wasn't nice to harvest, and it wasn't a beautiful enough flower for me to put up with those things. But by the time I'd realised that, I'd already put my order for seeds in for the following year, and I'd bought more calendula, a different type, but more calendula. And so I thought, well, I've already paid for the seeds, I'm just going to put it in because I don't want to waste that money. And all that happened was a big chunk of my garden was taken over by 2 different types of calendula that I didn't like because they didn't grow tall and they were super sticky and not nice to work with. So again, it was a waste of money, it was a waste of my time, and most of all, it was a waste of almost a quarter row. Now, like I say, my allotment is really small, so a quarter of a row is actually a really, really big space. And again, I probably left it a little bit too late to admit that and to then rip them out and get something else in. So I ended up with quite a dead space in the garden there for a long time, really until my dahlia came through. There was nothing sitting there, which was silly. I could have had something in. So yeah, if you don't love it, don't put it in. There's no point. Lesson number 4, and this is one specifically for me in my area, but I hope it might help you guys as well. And that is, I have to plant everything in autumn. Everything that I want to be in my garden for spring has to be fall planted. Now, it's kind of hard when you're starting out to know this because you really have to know your climate. And that's very different from your USDA zone. So your USDA zone tells you how cold it's going to be in the winter. Basically, how long are you going to go with frozen days, a hard frost on the ground, and what plants will survive in that zone. It has nothing to do with your summer temperatures. It has nothing to do with your climate. Now, you get microclimates in very small areas. For example, my sister, who's in Scotland and is technically in zone 7B, has her spring flowers quite often before I do. She had her poppy, her daffodil, and her tulips long before I did in zone 9B, purely because her back garden is a sun trap. It's just really, really sunny there, and there's walls all around it, so there's no wind coming at her as well. And the flowers like that, so her spring flowers were up a lot earlier than mine were, which confused me greatly. So you kind of have to know your climate, and then you have to be comfortable enough to ignore the seed packet. If the seed packet says start these 4 weeks before your last frost, then that's kind of what you want to do, but that's not always what you actually need to do, because for me, 4 weeks before my last frost is great, but then from when my last frost is to when it gets really hot here is so short that most of my spring plants, especially the slower growing ones like my stock, they just do not have enough time to get a nice growth on them before they flower. And then it gets too hot and they all die because they don't like the heat. So for me this year, I'm going to do everything planted in fall. And I already know that this is going to work better because I'll show you what my seedlings look like at home now. Here is my little seed pod. I have some Rudbeckia. These are stock, more stock at the back, more stock, some Geum. This is bergamot and my lupin at the back, which are doing really well. This is my achillea, which looks so good. I couldn't even get this started last year. Sweet William. These are Lisianthus, and they look really small, but they're coming. What, some more snapdragons. I've got echinacea. I've got scabious, and then more snapdragons down here at the bottom. But this is looking so good and healthy. I'm really happy with that. Now, see, a lot of these are things that I tried to plant last year in spring and just couldn't get them to germinate. I couldn't get my Rudbeckia going. I couldn't get my achillea going. I couldn't get any Geum going. All of these things just died because it wasn't the right conditions. Whereas this time, they've all come up really quickly and are really strong. And now I just have to try and not kill them over winter before I can actually get them in the garden. So I know that for me and in my actual climate, not my USDA zone, but in my actual climate, I need to be planting everything in fall. Autumn, fall, autumn. Okay, so kind of following on from lesson number 4 is lesson number 5, and that's that summertime in Japan is a bit crap. Yeah. And I had to accept that in my climate, It's hot. It's really hot. I mean, we were sitting around 38, 39 degrees here for days, weeks at a time with absolutely no rain. And it's not only hot, it's really, really humid, which is perfect for disease to grow. I had a lot of problem with powdery mildew this year because my plants were close together and they were getting really, really humid, and so disease just spread through them. It wasn't great. And I've had to accept that while I'm looking on the likes of Instagram and seeing people with these beautiful summer bouquets, all of their dahlia coming through, giant zinnia, loads of cosmos, I just can't grow that in my climate. I can't grow it here. My cosmos gets fried. It's way too delicate. It's such a delicate foliage and such a delicate flower that it just cannot stand the temperature here. Even drought tolerant plants have a problem here. You know, everything's drought tolerant up to a point and then it just dies. I have no water on my allotment. I'm having to bring it all. You can kind of see I have water barrels here. Now, as I said before, although the summer is incredibly humid, the winter is incredibly dry. So even in this dry weather, I'm out here watering my garden to make sure that what I've got in already for spring is not going to die before spring comes. So yeah, you've kind of got to accept that drought tolerant plants doesn't make them completely invincible to the sun, and that I've had to now accept that there are certain things I cannot grow, and most of those are in the summer. So I'm really focusing this year on my spring flowers and my autumn flowers and just kind of giving up those couple of months in the middle where, you know, I'm lying underneath my aircon. I'm sure my plants would like to lie under the aircon for a little bit to try and just cool things down because it's too hot. Now, I did see at a lot of the garden centres, because this year was incredibly hot in Japan, much hotter than it usually is. And I did see a lot of the home centre just started to put shade cloth over their entire outdoor sections. So that might have to be something that I look at. The other thing I'm going to look at, and if you've been following along, this might make you laugh, is sunflower. I swore that I wouldn't grow sunflower again, but I had so many empty spots in my garden and I had plans for what I wanted in autumn. But it still meant that for a large portion of time, I had empty spots. And so this year I have started to research sunflowers again and the 40-day varieties. So ones that I can start from seed and have a flower within 40 days. And that kind of fills that really bad stretch in the summer, kind of the end of July into August, mid-July, mid-August, where nothing else will survive. So I'm kind of looking at those sunflowers. Now, I will be looking at one seed, one flower, not the branching types, because the branching types took over this garden, and the ones that don't grow more than a metre, because I am not jumping up to try and snip off my sunflower mid-air like I ended up doing last time, because I'm just a wee person and the sunflower are very, very tall. But I guess researching what might be suitable for a short time to fill those gaps and make sure that I'm getting the most out of this garden is what I'm looking at. And for me, that looks to be fast-growing, sun-loving plants like sunflower. Now, whether they're going to be able to go in that heat, I don't know. That's something I'm going to have to find out this year if I have any gaps, but I'm hoping I won't. But yeah, just accepting that just because it's on the internet and other people are doing it doesn't mean you can do it in your area. The world is a big place and we all have very different temperatures, and it can hurt sometimes. You know, everyone thinks that summer is the best time for flowers when you're going to have so many blooms, and it's just not here. So spring and autumn it is, which is great because the spring flowers smell good and I really like them, and the autumn's the best time of the year anyway. So, and that is it from my allotment for this year. I really enjoyed it. I think I've got some great flowers out of it. I've had a house full of flowers the whole year. I mean, it's been hot, it's been sweaty, there are mosquitoes. These water tanks are really, really heavy. I've had disease, I've had bugs, I've had so many plants that didn't work, but I'm just trying them again. And as you can see from my seedling shot, I'm doing a lot better this year. So I hope that I'm going into next season strong. If you want to see what I did with my flowers this year, you can check out my Instagram page, which is From the Witch's Garden, and there is a link to that below. And if you want to follow along, remember to hit the subscribe button so you can see what happens in the garden and if we do better next year. And that is it from me. I will see you guys in 2024. Bye.